Hi, this is Sudhir, and in this tutorial I'll explain about ADO.NET Connected Architecture Sign-in. Here I have listed some of the steps which will help you to create a sign-in page. The first step is you have to write a sign-in SQL command in SQL Server. If it is working fine, you have to use that in ADO.NET. The second step is you have to create a sign-in web page and its UI based on your requirement. The third step is you have to write ADO.NET code in sign-in button click. The fourth step is you have to create a session before you navigate so that when you navigate to the next page, you can display the username in that page. So I'll be going into the details of each step in the next slides. So this is the first step in which I have displayed some of the table which is named as TBL admin. It has some columns. When the admin sign up, his data will be saved in this table. So I'm going to use the same columns for the sign-in page. That means when an admin enters his username and password, I'm going to check whether the username and password exists in the database table. If it really exists, I'll be navigating him to the next page. Otherwise, I'll be showing a message saying that invalid credentials. Here you can see a select command which is used for checking whether the username and password entered by the admin is correct or not. So the command is select star from table name, where username equal to some name and password equal to some password. If they are matching with the data present in the table, it's going to return the row of data. Otherwise, it is going to return an empty table. So I'm going to perform the first step in my SQL server. I'll go to my SQL server. I'm going to write a command here, select star from tbl underscore admin. This is a normal SQL command which is used to display the entire table data. You can see this is the table data I have present, which contains 2 rows. This data is inserted through sign up page by the admin. Now what I'll do is I'm going to select star from table admin. I'm going to add a where condition here, in which I'm going to check whether the username equal to, if the username is given as Sudhir and password is given as ABC. If the correct username and password is given, then this command will retrieve a row of data of the successful user. You can see one row of data is displayed here because the username and password I have given is matched with this username and password. If I have given some invalid username, I'm giving 2 R's. I'm going to execute this line of code. You can see no data is retrieved. That means the user is an invalid user. This username and password does not exist in the database. So I'm going to give the R here. So this is an sign-in SQL command which is tested in SQL Server. So the first step is complete. Move on to the next step. The second step is to design a web page which looks like this, which has username and password fields and a sign-in button. When the user clicks on sign-in button after entering username and password, if they are correct, he will be navigating to the next form. Otherwise, he will be showing invalid credentials message in the same page. So I'll open my Visual Studio to create a new project to design this web form. I have clicked on new project, selecting Visual C# and ASP.NET Web Application. I'm going to name it as ADO Sign-in. I'm going to click on OK. The template I want to choose is empty because I want to create my own web form. You can see ADO sign-in project is created with only one file called web.config. There are no web forms. Right click on the project, add new item to create a new item which is a web form. The web form name is webform1.aspx. That's a default name. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to click on add to add this page to my project. You can see that's a web form which is an empty one. I'm going to click on table to add a design. Table, insert table. I want 5 rows and 4 columns, and I'm going to click on OK. I want to write here as a sign in page and followed by username, password. 2 fields are required, and also I need some controls like text box for username, so that user will enter his username. He'll enter his password in this text box. A button to click by the user, and also I need a label which I'll place beside the button, because when user enters invalid credentials, I'll display that message in this label. So all these controls have a default IDs. I want to change it so that I can recognize them in my code. This text box 1 is changed as txt user name. This text box 2 ID is changed as txt password. This button ID will be changed as vtn sign in, and the text will be changed as sign in. The label with the default ID label 1 will be changed to LBL message. The text I'm going to remove it because I doesn't need any text to be displayed by default. Now the design is ready, and I'm going to see it once in the browser. It will be same like what we have seen in the snapshot. You can see form1.aspix is loaded with 2 fields, username and password, and it has a button called sign in. So some username and password will be entered here, and we're going to click on sign in. If they are correct, they has to go to next page. If they are invalid, it has to display a message here. For that we have to write an ADO.NET code. So coming back to the slide, this step is completed. We are moving on to the next step, which is ADO.NET code in sign in. For this I have to go to my Visual Studio. I'm going to double click on this sign in button to create an event for this. You can see a new event called button click underscore click is created. In this I have to write connection string. I have to write an SQL command which is tested in SQL earlier, where we will match with username and password entered by the user. We have to open the connection. I have to execute command. We have to navigate to next page or display invalid message, invalid credentials message. The username and password is correct, we'll navigate to new page, otherwise we'll display invalid credentials message on the label. And finally we are going to close the connection close. These are the steps we have to follow to write an ADO.NET code. The first step is you have to write a connection string. SQL connection is the class for which we have to create an object to write a connection string. This SQL connection is present using system.data.sql client namespace. You have to resolve that, and in the double quote we have to write a connection string. So I'm going to use Server Explorer to create my connection string. Right click on the data connections in the Server Explorer, select add connection, enter server name which you can find in your SQL server. In your SQL server, whatever the server name you're using to connect to SQL server, same server name you have to use. And remember that you are using Windows authentication. The same authentication you have to use in ADO.NET there. So I'm going to enter the server name, authentication as Windows authentication, and I have to select my database name, which is ADO examples. Here I have a button called test connection to check whether the connection is existing or not. As it is succeeded, I can click on OK. Now you can see a new connection is created here. Right click on it, select the properties to get the connection string in this properties. You have to double click on it to highlight it and copy the connection string. Here you have a double quotes in the parameters of SQL connection. There you have to paste it, and as there is a single quote in your connection string, it will throw an error. You have to replace that with a double quote. Otherwise you can add @ at the starting of the connection string so that the error will be removed. The first step is completed, that is connection string is added. The second step is you have to write some SQL command. SQL command space cmd equal to new SQL command. In this you have to write an SQL command and a connection object, which is con in our case. This object name has to be placed here. Now in this double quote you have to write an SQL command. Here we already have a tested one, which we have to copy it to paste it in this double quotes. You can see that the static values are there, student Sudhir and ABC are there. You have to replace that with the text box text, because whatever the user entered in the text boxes, that has to be checked with username and password. So I'm going to remove it. You have to replace that with double quotes. In the double quotes you have to add plus 2 times, and there you have to write text username dot text. This is how we have to divide. With double quotes we are going to divide the string into 2 parts. In between you are going to add text box text with the help of plus. Plus is used for concatenation. Same way, remove the ABC. You have to add 2 double quotes. Inside that 2 plus symbols. Inside that you have to write txt password dot text. So select star from table name, where username equal to username text box dot text, and password equal to password text box dot text. So that query has to be executed. Before that we have to open the connection using con.open. So now I'll execute the command. SQL data reader is the return type of it. Data reader equal to cmd dot execute reader. This execute reader is a method which will execute the select command and retrieves the data of one row if the username and password is correct and they are present in the tbladmin table. I'm going to check whether it's going to bring rows or not. dvr dot has rows. If it is having some rows, what I have to do is I have to read the rows first. While dr dot read, this while loop is used to read the data inside it. I'm reading it because this is for navigation or display. This if condition is satisfied means it has some rows in it. While it is reading, I'm going to create a session for it because I want to save the values of the username. I created a session with the name of session of username. In that I'm going to save dr column will bring the successfully logged in username. In that column the value will be present and I'm going to save that. For example, Sudhir is entered in this text box. The entire row will be brought and it is placed in dr. So I'm going to ask, in that dr row username has to be saved in the session. And after saving it to session, one thing you have to do is response dot redirect. You have to redirect to the next page because it's a successful user. But to redirect, I doesn't have a page, so what I have to do is, before going to the next line of code, first I have to add one more page. Right click on the ADO sign in, add new item. It's a web form and it is web form 2.aspx. If the user entered correct username and password in webform.aspx, he will navigate to its capital W web form 2.aspx. It will go to that. Else, that means if username and password are incorrect, in label we have a label LBL message. In that text will be displayed as invalid credentials. Now I have created a session and I have navigated to the second page. But one more thing is, when you go to the new page, if you want to show the username, this name created in this session can be used there. And at last, we have to use con.close to close the session. Now the code in the first page is completed, but in the second page, I have to right click on this and click on view code to go to this code page. In the page load, I want to display the text of the user who has successfully signed in. Response.write is used to display some text on the web page. I'm going to get the value from the session. This session is created on the first page after sign in. You want to convert into string because its response.write is a string. So the value which is stored after sign in will be retrieved in this page from this session, and it's going to display on the page. So let's start executing this web form 1.aspx. So you can see web page executed. I'm going to write some username and password ABCDE, which is not present in the database. So when I click on this, what happens is you can see invalid credentials are displayed. That means the data is not present in the database. But if I write ABC, which is the correct data which is present in database, in CLI, it is navigated to webform2.aspx. It is navigated to the next page because it says successful username and password. And the username password which is saved in the session in the first page is retrieved in the second page and is displayed on the web page. You can show username like this. So this session, this sign in button contains this code. The first part is how to execute it. Let me go to the slides and you can see so code for sign in is going to be this, where I have written a connection string and a command, and data reader is executed. Next I have some more code in my Visual Studio which I have written, that is for navigation to the next page or to display invalid credentials there. Close. So this is ADO.NET code for sign in. Actually creating session and navigation is happened here. This is for creating session and navigation. So I'm going to cut this. So this is a code for creating session and navigation. If it contains rows, I'm going to read the data to create a session here and navigate to that webform2.aspx. If it is failed, I'll be displaying invalid credentials of the label and I'm going to close the session. And finally, displaying signed in username in next page. In the second web form in my Visual Studio, webform2.aspx, I've written some code in page load. This piece of code which will retrieve the data from the session which is present in the first page, and it's going to display the username. So this is how a sign-in page will be created in ASP.NET Web Page using ADO.NET, and that too in connected architecture. Thank you.